Hello, my name is George from FFM Music, and this is the FFM Music Soundtrack Podcast. And today I'm really happy to have with us my colleague and friend Piotr Musiał, who's a great Polish composer and orchestrator. Hello, and welcome to the series. So you'll be the first one to start this with, and we're really happy for you to be here.
Yeah, hi everyone, and thanks George for inviting me to this podcast. It's really nice to meet again.
Even though it's like virtual, we've met live and we even had some beers and we did some sort of a live podcast in a bar already.
Yeah, with some weird food.
Yeah,
I mean, for me it was weird. For you, it was the usual.
Yes. So tell us a bit about yourself. So we know you're a great musician. So you've worked on great video games. You also wrote music for Frostpunk, which, by the way, is one of my wife's favorite games. So just tell us, how did you start?
That's actually a long story because I started like very early in my life. When I was young, I really liked to play on this toy piano we had at home, and I really didn't prefer to play already written songs like Christmas carols or children's songs or whatever you could hear in the kindergarten or the school. I really like to play my own stuff, even it was probably horrible, most of it. But that's how it started. I think this was the seed that later grew into something that I'm doing today. And when I was in school, I didn't go to musical school at first, but then I really wanted to learn music. So my parents agreed on it, and because probably my father is also a musician, so he thought it was a great idea for me to develop the musical skills too. And I studied percussion first. Then, of course, we had these lessons, the piano lessons, choir, orchestra, yes, and all the stuff that you usually get in musical schools. And then I picked to study musical further and went to the Academy of Music in my city, Łódź, and studied percussion again. But when I had exams, the introductory exams to the Academy, yes, there was a question what I would like to do in my future, and I've already written that I would probably be a composer in the future. So this was my path to doing what I'm doing right now. And I think percussion was also a great choice because it's so versatile instrument.
Yes, you go through. So you probably went through all the mallets and the drums.
Yes. Of course. The percussion stuff is very versatile. I mean, it's so many instruments. The membrane stuff, all the drums, timpani,
of course.
Then you go to the melodic instruments, which are very, very nice and very cool to play on. I mean, everyone loves marimba and sound and vibraphone.
Yes.
So I love it too. And I really leaned towards the melodic percussion.
Yeah, people love melodic percussion, which you can also hear, for example, in American Beauty, the soundtrack with the marimba, which is now everywhere basically afterwards.
Yeah, Thomas Newman is really good at it, and the use of it. I think he probably make it more popular in film music.
Yes, that's right.
Thanks to those soundtracks.
Yeah, and you probably played also in the orchestra, in the school orchestra and academy orchestra.
Yeah, in high school and in the academy. And of course, after I finished studies, I also played in the Philharmonic Orchestra for a while.
And did this help you in your path as a composer?
I never really thought of it as a help, but I think it was really useful for me to listen to the sound of the orchestra, to observe how each instrument plays and which instruments play with them together, and how the chords are spread out between instruments. That's really useful, and I think for any composer that would like to compose orchestral music in the future, I think it's useful to go to concerts,
Yeah, to
go
the rehearsal.
to the rehearsals.
Yeah. Yeah, because in the rehearsals you also listen to combinations of instruments. So the conductor might say, okay, can we just listen to this unison line between French horns and cello, and then you hear how this mixed timbre sounds like, which you might not be able to do in an actual concert, because it gets, behind all the other instruments and orchestration.
And then there's this stuff that inspires you. I remember a couple of years ago, I went to listen to Carmina Burana because I previously played it a couple of times with the orchestra. So I was in the back.
Yeah.
And then I went to listen to it. And the sounds, the combinations of sounds like the piccolo and glockenspiel, it was so new to me because I didn't hear the sound from the front, like from the audience before.
Yes.
So the sounds were really inspiring, and I didn't really know at first what sounds were these, but I figured it out, of course.
Carmina Burana is actually a very complicated piece for percussion, I think, just from a conductor's perspective. So what did you play?
It's usually something like bass drum or snare drum.
So that there are lots of tempo and meter changes.
The piece is very rhythmically complex.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of fun in it because it's kind of minimal music, right? It's so many repetitions. It feels like it's always evolving on the macro scale, not on the micro scale. You don't hear the differences so much at first in some of those
segments of the parts. Movements, yes.
In some of the movements. And it's so much fun. For a percussionist, it's always a lot of counting empty bars.
Yes.
So it's really fun to sit there and count bars because you enjoy the music and everything else is driving you to this one sound that you have to play, for example, in this specific moment. It's a lot of fun.
And when you in this context, in a rehearsal, do you find that working with different conductors also helped you in your path as a composer? Like their experience, their creative input. Sometimes sometimes it could be really bad creative input, but sometimes we get to work with people who are really great musicians and who understand the music in a different way that you do. So did you find this this to be somehow of a help in your composer career as well?
I never thought of it like that. Yeah. But surely there is. There are, for example, moments that inspire me to do what I do today. There was this conductor who was the director at the Harmonic Orchestra, and he wasn't very liked by the orchestra because he was kind of hard on us. And at that point, I used to play almost every week. So I was there quite often, and he saw me. And at some point, I made a lot of mistakes. Of course, if I was there, the first week, second week, and a couple of years later, at some point he told me, "I saw you the first time you came to play. I didn't know what will be, if it will be a good idea for you to come here and play in the orchestra. But now I see that you have this passion for music that is not present in all of us." And he told me in front of the orchestra. That was really kind of nobling for me moment. Yeah. I don't know. That he told me to continue with this passion and never lose it. And from that point on, I really liked the conductor. So he kind of helped me to maintain the energy for a couple of years.
In a way, our profession, especially when we study it, it's very important when you get your teacher becomes some sort of a mentor to you, and the communication can be very important. For example, in my personal experience, I had this really great teacher who taught me orchestration. So I really still have a very high opinion about him. So one day I went to him with like a piece of my music, and I went to him and said, "Hey, professor, I finished my studies with the orchestration, and I have nothing else to do for the week. So I decided to show you this piece of mine that I composed." And he never actually really looked at it at all. And he said, "You know, you're a very good orchestrator. Just don't do, any composing. That's not for you." Which was, that was really kind of a sad moment. But my
oh man, fired that guy.
yeah. But in my experience, this is something that actually motivates me to keep on going. But I know that if other people would get this type of a feedback from a person, like from a mentor, that might be devastating.
Yeah, so I had a similar situation when I studied percussion. I brought one of my pieces, which was poorly printed, from MIDI, from Cubase. So it looked like crap, obviously. And he looked at it because he was the teacher of composition. So I thought it would be a good idea to consult my stuff. It was a piece that I planned to compose a marimba concert with the orchestra. So I basically composed two movements and brought the first one to him. He looked at it, he analyzed it for a moment, and he said, no. Basically, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. He of course he tried to direct me in some sort of probably modern music style when he looked at it, but I didn't go for it and just continued.
Yeah.
I never finished the concert, but it was a fun situation.
Have you written any other or finished any other concert work?
Yeah, written, yes. Finished, no. I mean, I have plans for future, but looking at it from the perspective, I will probably never finish it. I wrote maybe 10 minutes, maybe 12 of orchestral suite, which was supposed to be like the fairy tale fantasy stuff. It's quite good, I think, but it's never finished. It's the first movement is done. I started the second movement, and of course, then I had work.
Yeah. And how do you compare to, game music or film music? How do you find concert music to be written? Is it more complicated for you or is it easier?
I don't know. It's just different, I'm not restrained in any way, especially the form.
Yes.
And I could shape the dynamics and all the range of emotions in it and change however often I want, because I really like music that is more interesting than just simple, plain, slow developing. I enjoy music that is more interesting.
And now that you brought it up, I have to ask you, normally what sort of music do you listen to?
None.
None. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of sad, but I don't listen to too much music. Do you?
Yeah, now that I think of it, no, I tried to listen. Actually, a few years back, I was at home for Christmas, and it just occurred to me that I didn't have the chance to listen to music just for the pure sake of listening to music and enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to fix this and to find new sort of music, something that's more interesting and something that I haven't listened to that can kind of surprise me.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, for example, I listen to jazz, but mostly ethno jazz and like ethnic jazz music.
Yeah, when I try to listen to music, I usually find a piece that's sort of my area, but not like mine. So obviously, looking at the big names, John Williams, of course, there's a lot of surprisement in the music. That's what I really love. I often just listen to, for example, not often because I said I don't listen to music, but whenever I listen to music, I really enjoy all the little bits that John Williams does. And sometimes I listen to it and don't really know what's happening. And that's what really inspires me, because that's something I wouldn't probably think of. This is this kind of eureka moment, like, what the hell is this? and then I have
Yes.
to know.
Yes, and then you go and listen to it over and over again till you get what's
Yeah.
happening, behind it. Yeah.
Like
So
there's this piece in the Harry Potter series. I don't sing very well, but it
uh-huh.
yeah,
Yes.
and there's
Yeah. Dun, dun,
and
dee,
then there's
dun, dun.
and
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
a C major on the bottom and a flat major on the top. It sounds so amazing. I mean, it's so simple, but also so complicated, and
Well,
it works because it's orchestrated so well. It's the bottom, and there's enough separation for the A flat on the top to make it work
to
and
to
not
make it work.
clash.
Yes,
Yeah.
and not sound like a mistake. And also his decisions sometimes are they sound like wow, but it's actually very simple. Like for example, Jaws, that's just like the octatonic scale brought
Mhm.
in chords, so basically diminished chords. So it sounds the whole thing. Obviously, it starts with just a minor second, but when all the harmonic language comes in, you're thinking, "Oh, this is really cool and this is really nice." But actually, it's very very simple, and he somehow makes it work.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just made into a piece or just incorporated in the orchestra so well that it's just sometimes it's just mind-blowing, while it's something that it sounds like something that you didn't know and it surprises you.
Mm.
Yeah, speaking of which, your favorite soundtracks from whatever time?
Well, I would say that maybe my most favorite soundtrack is Lord of the Rings
Oh yeah.
and The Fellowship of the Ring. I think that the Fellowship is the best one in the the
Yeah, it's
series.
the most original, the most fresh.
And and again, it's very very simple. It's close to Carmina Burana in terms of instrumentation.
Mhm, mhm.
And in terms of sounds, the harmonic language most of the time is very simple. Like for example, when Gandalf falls down with the
From the
Balrog,
tower.
yeah,
Mhm.
and when they no in the Casa Dune
Ah,
mines,
yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
So when they go out with the sad moment with Boy Solo, it's basically like a pop song chord progression, but it kind of works, and it sounds like minimalistic in a way, but very beautiful. And obviously with the choirs, because I'm a huge fan of choirs and choral music, all the elvish Lothlorien voices, which are basically clusters most of the time. So you have like A minor, so it's a cluster fifth, so A, B, C, D, E sung simultaneously, which at that time was something fresh
Yeah.
that came
Yeah.
out.
That's what I was going to say. And previously, I think the Matrix was the Matrix before it. Yeah.
Don
Yeah.
Davis.
So Don Davis, right?
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, plenty of this kind of stuff and the minimalism and all the repetition and the figures that just drive underneath something else.
Yeah.
And I really love the about the Lord of the Rings. I really love how not rushed the music feels. The film is so long, but it never feels boring. For me at least. I've watched it like maybe 3 or 4 times
Yeah,
already.
myself too. Myself too.
And the mind blowing the Ring theme.
Oh yeah. Da
I mean,
da da da
how
da
the
do
hell
dee
did
da
he
da. Yeah.
came
Yeah.
up with this?
Yes, yeah, and all the themes, because it's very leitmotif driven, the whole
Mhm.
soundtrack, and everything has. I don't know, maybe there's a hidden theme for a house in Hobbiton. The house has a musical theme of a sort. But yeah, it's very different to what soundtracks are supposed to sound like today.
Yeah, we are more into the sound design, I think, area right now. I
Yes.
mean, I will always say that Zimmer is very an amazing composer, and I really respect it. And he really started melodic
Yes.
at first, and then this change. I mean, it's cool for a composer to change like that. and introduced new qualities and new standards for film music. And the sound he has, that's try to do it yourself, right?
Yes, that's right.
We've tried.
We've all tried it. Yeah, that's right. I'm also very much in love with the musicologists can say this better than me, but like the first phase of Hans Zimmer's art and soundtrack works, like King Arthur, The Last Samurai, obviously Gladiator. I'm also a huge fan of The Lion King. I think that The Lion King has a sublime music. And
Prince of Egypt.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, I also like, for example, Interstellar was. It's very different than what he did before, even though there's still his kind of like, I explain it to myself as a Wagnerian musical language. That's those kind of a dark chords that
swelling stuff.
Yeah, but nowadays it's more of a sound design driven score indeed. Maybe, do you think this is because of budgeting, or?
Well, not always. I think the Inception was quite expensive to record, and that's pretty minimalistic to me and sound designish.
Yeah.
But probably it's more about the time restraints and deadlines. I know, what can you do quickly that is effective and works in the movie, because I won't lie, most of the music will work really well in Hans Zimmer's music will work in the movie really great.
Yeah, well, I would say he's the biggest director among composers. He really knows how to feel the picture and how to treat it.
Yeah, and very often it's just a lot of fun. I mean, the latest Wonder Woman.
I haven't seen this yet. Don't spoil it. Don't spoil it.
Quite fun.
Yeah.
Quite fun, but it's it's not the 80s and 90s. I'm kind of always going back because I was born in the 80s. Probably my musical preferences just grew up in the 90s. So that's why John Williams, of course, and of course Alan Silvestri.
Yeah, Silvestri, Goldsmith, Michael Kamen. At least these are my favorites. I think that Jerry Goldsmith was very underrated for what he actually is, because he's like a chameleon. So you can listen to Star Trek, to Alien, to Basic Instinct, and to the 13th Warrior, for example, or Mulan, and Chinatown, or LA Confidential, which are kind of in the same. So you listen to all of those soundtracks, and it's as if different people have written the music, and it's one person, because it has certain stylistic properties that are kept in all of those. Yeah, like musical language and melodic intervals that he likes and stuff.
Yeah, scales.
Yeah.
And harmony. Yeah.
Yes, that was kind of a different time, and nowadays they had their job only as a composers, and nowadays I think that we have to keep some sort of a balance between the creative work and also the business side of work, because everything we do is most of the time a package deal. Is it the same with your work?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's not only the music, the business, but so much technical issues involving composing and recording, music mixing.
Yes.
Yeah, and balancing between music and business, it's really hard. Really hard. I mean, you would probably, like me, want to write music for every project that is offered to you. But it's impossible, and you have to choose. Right. And that's really sad, because you have to go on with your gut and see where it takes you, right?
Yeah. And with the previous example of, for example, Goldsmith, his job was only to write the music and orchestrate it. But nowadays, as you said, you also have technical requirements. So most of the time, you might also need to mix this as well. You're mixing your music, right?
Yeah. Whenever I have to. But I mix my stuff because I'm a control freak, basically. So.
Yeah, I know how you feel, because sometimes you have a clear vision of what the music should sound like. And if it doesn't, then it annoys me.
Yeah, the same with orchestration.
Yes.
You've encountered it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we've worked together on Red Solstice too, and even though your orchestrations were really great and very accurate, I was always trying to add something to it or to change.
Yeah, normally. I've also like done a multiple scores where I just due to time constraints I had to have help from people here in our team. And yeah, sometimes something that I have in my mind is not the same as they would interpret the MIDI from the software.
Yeah, starting with just dynamics, it's so important.
Yes.
You write mezzo forte and it's already too loud sometimes and at the wrong character. So I guess the reason why I brought it up is that previously, maybe in the 80s and before, maybe 90s, the composers and the directors had more trust to each other,
Yes.
when they didn't have what we have today, so mock-ups, that's music made with samples, so it sounds more like a demo, but almost finished, right? Sometimes too finished.
Yes, depending on the skill.
Yeah, and the director, the client can already hear it, listen to it, and even edit with the picture or in the game. And previously, they had a piano, they had orchestrators who did all of the orchestral stuff from probably just sketches.
Yes.
So there was a lot of trust involved, and I really can't imagine how would it work today. For example, if E.T. was made today with someone else, then maybe, let's say, it's still John Williams, but it's still made on the piano or from sketches, something that wouldn't probably happen.
Yeah, sometimes the director might accept it, but the studio or the producer will not. Yeah.
Yeah, because they don't hear the result. They don't see the big picture.
That's right. But this is also,
Yeah, this is the part of the business too.
And
the trust they had.
That's right, and that created those connections between Spielberg and John Williams. I know of a story that Michael Kamen, I'm not 100% sure that it's true, but during the recording of Robin Hood, they actually, the director didn't like the music, so they had to recompose and reorchestrate it on the stand in the studio. Mm-hmm. So they made a larger break, and Michael Kamen started
15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Yeah,
you have 15 minutes. I actually had the same similar story with one of the soundtracks that I worked on. We recorded the end credits, and the director said, "Oh, you know what? With live musicians, this sounds much better than in the demo. So let's do the main theme like that as well." And I was like, "But it's not orchestrated. In the main theme doesn't have this instrumentation and stuff." And he was like, "Yeah, just make it happen. You have like 20 minutes."
No.
Yeah. So
did you make it?
Yeah, I did. It sounds awful, but he was really happy. So at the end, maybe that's
yeah, mission successful.
So with games, just to get back on the topic of the production side of it,
mm-hmm.
Do you need to know about, for example, Wise or any other audio engine that's the development studio uses for the game?
Yes and no. Basically, until this year, or previous year actually, I didn't have to implement music at all myself.
Yes.
I do have to know how the engine works and how the switching works, and sometimes I design how the switching will work. But until last year, I didn't have to do it myself. But I think the Red Solstice was the first project I did implement myself in F mode, which I think isn't the best, but I worked around it.
It was like one of the first ones, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's very valuable that you know how it works, that you know what you can do in the music, even if you don't necessarily have to implement it yourself. There's usually a person to do it.
So does this mean that you also analyze other games? Do you play games? I forgot to ask
Yeah,
you.
sure. Of course.
Of course. Okay. Yeah, because I know of people who don't.
Well,
and write music for games. So that's kind of weird.
yeah.
So and do you analyze the sound effects and the music and how it crossfades and
Yeah, the music, of course, how it works in the game, how the switching is implemented. That's quite, important to know. Recently, for example, I played the Guardians of the Galaxy. It came out just last year. Really cool game. I highly recommend it. And the music is awesome, awesome. I mean, there's plenty of licensed songs. There's also a made-up band, especially for the game. And there's plenty of cinematic music, and this is top-level Hollywood style. And the way the switching works is so seamless. It's really, really cool to hear. I mean, they have endings for fights, and they are so unintrusive that you will never notice it, but it drives the game very well.
So how do you base your adaptive music then? Is it complicated when you do it? Is it complicated for you to think of ways or?
Yeah, I think adaptive music is quite complicated to think of anyway, even if you don't do it, just observe others. But I'm not really a big fan of too much going on. Whatever Austin Wintory does is genius stuff, obviously.
Yes.
But I think that sometimes the music is directing the player too much and driving the emotions of the player the way the composer or the director wants. I like giving the player a little bit of space to interpret whatever is going on the screen. I was maybe lucky that most of my games weren't really shooters or this kind of action stuff. So Frostpunk, for example, it's all linear music, and maybe that's why it works, because there's plenty of space and dynamic bumps and the musical stuff that just works solely as music.
There is something that someone once mentioned to me. Actually, adaptive music does not capture the longer attention span of the listener compared to linear music. So the person gave me an example with Diablo, that you know of the music, you remember the music once you have played the game, and then any action-driven adaptive music that in between all those like 4 or 8 bar loops, you kind of lose the big picture of the form of the music form, because there's no form actually there. You create the form as a player.
Yeah, but I guess that's the entire point of it.
Yes, of
it's
course.
supposed to be there and here and now when you play it, and mostly make you imagine and make you live through whatever you are playing then and there. Yeah, you've brought Diablo, which is a very good example of linear music, because the music lives and there's plenty of going on musically, and the form is sort of linear, and it's good to listen to, and it doesn't distract you. While interactive music is very hard to make into listenable songs for albums, for example, for soundtracks. And linear music wouldn't probably work for some genres of games. Like I'm obviously following on Twitter some of those composers that do plenty of interactive music, like Austin Wintory, Olivier Delivier.
Yeah, Olivier, yes.
Yeah, he's like the interactive music freak. It works. Whatever he's doing, they are doing, it really works. For me, it's just not enough space for the listener and for the player.
And on your work, for example, on The Witcher, were you connected with the game beforehand? I mean, did you play the game?
Before writing for The Witcher? No.
No.
afterwards. That's the funny thing. I actually played the game after maybe a year. The stuff that I worked on was released, and I kind of bounced off it. Didn't really enjoy it that much. Sometimes the game is showing signs of being a game, if you know what I mean. If you're playing and don't feel it's a game, it's part of your life. If you just
I understand. Yes. So it's
you immerse yourself
yes.
sometimes in the game, and this is something that I didn't catch with The Witcher. I felt this is a game. I felt whenever I will go 200 meters that way, I will certainly meet some monster to kill. And then
Yes.
I will have like maybe 200 meters of break, and then another monster group. I just figured out the game somehow and didn't enjoy it that much. That's sad, but sometimes there are games that do this. Some games you never feel it.
I'm playing Ghost of Tsushima right now. Do you know this game?
Yeah, I haven't played, but heard of it. Yeah.
It's a really nice game. I mean, it's with the great cinematography, the whole art and direction is really nice. Music is really nice, but it does have. So you ride a horse in that direction, and then suddenly you
have to jump off the horse
yes,
and
find Mongos. Yeah. and then you get back and they're gone, and you meet another group of other like Ronin or samurai or whatever. Yeah, so I understand what you mean. And if it's not a secret, of course, how did you work on The Witcher? How did you understand about the music, about the world art, concept art? I suppose there's certain guidelines about the music as well. So how did you get acquainted to it?
Yeah, I've met Marcin Przybyłowicz of, I don't know, a game convention. And we knew each other before, but we talked about The Witcher and the stuff that he was starting to do. And I told him I orchestrate, and whenever he needs, just call me, right? So finally he called because they planned to do a concert with The Witcher music on the Film Music Festival in Krakow.
This is the large one with Parsifal in front and the huge orchestra and choir?
Yeah, exactly.
The one that was filmed?
Yeah.
Okay.
And this was some time after the release of the original game, The Wild Hunt. I agreed to do the orchestrations. And then I, of course, finished, and he talked to me again about possibly doing some music for the DLC. There was, of course, this sort of contest, public contest, and I also took part in it. I guess I had some sort of head start, not to be dishonest. I probably had some sort of head start because of the scores.
Yeah, the orchestra.
Yeah, and we started working together on it. And start answering your questions. Yeah, I had some sort of idea about the music because I already orchestrated it. I was quite, I knew the music quite well. So for me, it wasn't very hard to get into it. But the great thing about Blood and Wine DLC was that the style was a little bit different. And I think it was one of the reasons why it worked great for me, because the style was more the fantasy stuff that I liked, the more bright and colorful, and it's like a different game. So they brought me in to write kind of different music than they write, and that's cool. They wrote also different kind of music for the DLC, and the whole idea of for example, using the accordion in this fun style for a change. Yeah, it was Martin's idea. So he brought me in and then filled me in with the styles, and all the graphics and footage from game was very inspiring as well.
Yeah, well, it's in a kind of in a different country in the game, so a different culture.
Yeah, so it's like Tuscany.
Yeah, exactly. Now that we speak about games and their styles, so tell us a bit about Frostpunk.
What do you want to know?
Well, how did you came up with the ideas orchestration-wise? You're using a quartet? Is it the Adam Quartet?
Atom String Quartet.
Yes.
Yeah, so I had a rough idea about the music before even I saw the game. I wrote music for the first teaser, and the teaser was already kind of time stretched. It was a scene, Frostpunk teaser.
Okay.
You saw a snowflake drop into a cave from top, an open cave from top,
Yes.
into a man who's lying on the snow and probably dead and frozen. And it was like in slow motion. Everything felt in slow motion, even the snowflake. So I felt maybe using a time stretched instruments idea wasn't so bad, because it's frost punk, so it's frozen kind of.
Yes.
The sounds could be frozen in a way. And this is what started the whole ambient idea about freezing sounds. And of course, on top of that, I didn't really know yet what to do when I was doing the teaser. Then they showed me the game. And yeah, I saw that the game isn't always about, just city building. It's a lot about the people and how they feel about everything that's going on around. I felt that the music of the people should be something different from the surroundings, and the surroundings should have their own life. For those surroundings, I thought that the frozen sounds, the time stretch stuff, like for example, a piano time stretched 30 times, that's really a nice drone pad.
Yes.
Or even short compositions, just 3 bars, that is like for full orchestra or a choir. You can just time stretch it 30 times, add some reverbs, filter it because it's usually just grainy and gritty.
Yes.
So yeah, from this stuff you could make a really nice ambient music, and this was the base of the city and the surroundings and how it would sound overall. Plus to that, I always compose whenever I can. I compose with sound effects on in the background. So I had this wind playing in the background in my ears. So I tried to match the sounds, and the ambience were kind of warm sounding, even the game is about cold, because it works with the sound of the wind, and it mixes very well. Sort of, separates.
That's a very nice idea. I might steal it because it's a it's a nice idea.
Just let's sign an NDA, and we'll talk about details later.
Yeah. So
that was the music of the city, the surroundings. It's still one piece of music, and the sound, the emotions of the people, the stories, that should be something else. And because Frostpunk is really not a very fast game, it's like city building. It can take forever to build a city, and sometimes 2 hours to change any situation in the game. So obviously it requires some sort of moody orchestral style stuff. For example, I was kind of inspired by an old game, Arcanum.
Okay. Yes, I know it. Yeah.
So yeah, because Frostpunk is essentially steampunk, but in the frozen world. The first steampunk game that came into my mind was Arcanum, and that was string quartet only, if I recall. It was just mainly string quartet for the whole soundtrack, and I remember playing it and thought this could work, because even though it's not orchestral, it's not big, it conveys so much emotions, especially that it's single people. You are basically taking care of the city of 100 at the first, and it sometimes grows. So the string quartet was great to start with, and then you can end up with 700 people in the city. I thought adding the orchestra was a good idea to make it feel like an actual growth.
And in the game, does this react in the same way? So, for example, is it adaptive? So when you build your colony, the music changes or not?
At first, the project was made that way to have the music mostly with string quartet in the beginning, and then gradually grow with the orchestra, which was later tracks that I wrote. I mostly started with quartet and then added string ensemble. But they tested it and thought that it's okay to just randomize most of the music. We also have some sort of phases in the game. The early phase is just building, and there's not much going on. That's like maybe 2 hours, 10 days, I think, in the game. Then an event happens that forces you to pick one faction of, or one way in the book of laws.
Yeah.
So you can go order or faith. You can choose one or the other. You cannot choose both. And for this, I also had tracks that were more fit for order or for faith. And they just like maybe launched a couple of times during the game when you were already on this faith or order side. Of course, there are two situations in the game that required special music, because every other pieces could be still randomized, and it worked really, really great with the game, because the music isn't flat in a way, dynamically, in a way that sometimes the interactive music is being written. So the music lifts. You have proper form. It starts slow or easy and then grows, and sometimes goes back to nothing. This is something that makes the New London, the city in Frostpunk, live a little bit more, because you will not expect sometimes the music to grow as much. It feels sometimes random, but it's also surprising and noticeable for the player. Yeah. So I think this was one of the reasons the soundtrack works.
And when you spoke about the time stretching and also time stretching like melodic materials, are those melodic materials only from sampled instruments, or are they, for example, from the quartet or the string orchestra?
From my own personal stuff. So yeah, sometimes samples, sometimes even a live orchestra.
Yeah, so something that's already been recorded. And when you record it, did you record it in a different like sample rate because of the time stretching, or just?
No, actually, this was just, I picked just compositions from my hard drive.
Stuff that you have already recorded. Okay.
Yeah, from stuff that I already have written, and mostly hidden in the drawer and not used much, but also from previous games of 11-bit studios that they don't know about it, but there's some stuff from Anomaly, for example, or
Nice.
This War of Mine.
Yeah, obviously you never know about this when you hear the music itself. But that's interesting. Have you thought about maybe doing some sort of simple instrument in like Contact with just time stretched?
Basically, the whole process was quite taxing. I mean, you had to stretch it, that's fine. But then, for example, from a composition that is 3 minutes, you had to pick this 1 second in the normal time that will work 30 times. Yeah, so there was a lot of trials and errors, and then reverbing and so on.
Yeah, and you do this entirely in, for example, Cubase, the audio manipulation. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I used Pulse Stretch. That's one of the free tools that you can almost indefinitely.
Yeah, it's actually really nice. And with the quartet, how did you work with them? Did you just give them the scores already orchestrated, or did you prefer to also come up with some ideas, even as playing styles during the recording session?
Yeah, because it was quite complex when you think of it vertically. So I had too much to think of myself for anyone else to bring in some randomness to it.
Yes.
It's like you're writing for an orchestra and just tell the bassist, one of the bassists to play whatever, whatever you
Yes.
think fits.
Yeah.
I mean, they are great. They play jazz, they play their own compositions and arrangements of classical music. They're really amazing. Atom String Quartet.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to use that much of their, because they do it in different style than I wanted to have in Frostpunk. It was more classical, not maybe so much in their vein, but it worked. I just wrote everything out.
Yes. As I sometimes like to. Depends on the project and the music, of course, but I sometimes like to get players, if it's in a more like relaxed atmosphere, for example, in my studio. So I would just have something that's very simple musically, like a couple of bars of chord changes, and then just experiment with different playing styles like flotando or sul tasto, or like a mixture of both, changing bows if it's for a stringed instrument. And then sometimes music that I have written to be very dull becomes interesting in a way. So I was just curious whether you to do this as well on your project.
Yeah, I understand this because it's very inspiring, and it can really make the music. You compose it, but it makes the music. The player can make the music.
Yeah.
In case of Frostpunk, I wanted, I'm a control freak, I remind you. So I wanted everything to be my way. But for example, I'm working on another project right now. It's not with Atom String Quartet, and it's not Frostpunk related. It's a very cool project that is really, you would think, not my style. But I had Mateusz Smoczyński, who's the violinist of Atom String Quartet, and he's really great in sort of country style. So just to give you a glimpse of
so like Americana fiddle.
Yeah.
Yes. Nice.
He plays a baritone violin. Have you heard it?
Yeah, it's a 5-string violin, right? The electric one, or not?
No, it's just like a regular violin, but just tuned like an octave and a fourth. It's like almost a cello range.
No, I haven't heard this. Oh, that's
amazing instrument.
Yes.
Well, I'm not working with this instrument this time, but I'm sure I will want to because I just found about it. But he's great in improvising and providing some cool ideas that I wouldn't probably come up with. So the next project, I have a lot of improvisations and stuff that came from Mateusz, for example.
Yeah. Well, when it comes out, you have to remind me we should do another podcast talking about this.
Cool.
And when you go, because you have a very big experience with working with live orchestras, whether it's your music or orchestrations or even sample library development. So technology, samples. Do you mix samples with live recordings? Normally, when you work on one of your projects, like on a piece of music, and you record strings, do you then overdub the sampled instruments behind the recordings?
Yeah, I try not to. I mean, it's something that you should consider whenever you want to achieve specific sound. And sometimes the budget won't allow to do it. Not enough strings or not enough brass to make it massive, for example.
Yes.
For trailer music or something like that. So sometimes I will overdub it, but I'm trying not to whenever I can.
And if you go into that direction, what do you think the most important part about the recording is? Do you need to match the samples, or do the players need to match the samples, or do you go afterwards back and change the samples if you have to overlay them?
Yeah, if I have to overlay, then samples go second. So
samples
I will match
seconds,
the
always.
orchestra. But usually I don't have to.
Yes. Oh, that's
the Frostpunk is also almost 100% live orchestra and quartet. Whenever I have to fix something, sometimes you don't get so much bass and nice low string legato,
low end, yes.
This low C from a single bass, for example.
Yes, compared to like 8 basses recorded in a library, sample library.
Yeah, and sometimes you just have to choose in the orchestration what's more important. For example, if the celli are playing with the basses, or maybe they are better utilized in any other way, playing melody or whatever rhythm.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And for you, what are the biggest challenges in a recording session? When you listen to it, what do you pay attention to?
I'm just enjoying the time.
You're enjoying the time. Okay. Well, that's good, because I'm nervous when I have to record my music, whether I'm going to record everything or not.
Yeah, well, I have to be honest with you. I'm never nervous. I'm excited, and I'm focused usually when I'm recording with you. That's very, very cool. I'm enjoying it because the orchestra plays. I'm quite sure of the orchestrations usually, so I don't have to worry about that. I know what they will play, and I just have a vision of how they should play it. But they will, of course, add another level of emotions in it, and that's usually just mind-blowing.
Yeah, that's a really nice perspective.
That's why we do it, right?
Yeah. At the end, that's the most important thing.
So you remember one track from Frostpunk was recorded in one take?
Yes.
Because they nailed it, and it's on the soundtrack, the first take.
Yeah. But
it's so much fun when you just have notes on the paper, and even though you make mock-ups with all the dynamics and expression and the technical modern composer stuff that you have to take care of, then even then the orchestra makes it even better, and when you feel that they are into it, that's such a reward every time.
Yeah, and then you've spent like weeks trying to make a decent mock-up, and their first rehearsal take is even better than what at least that's in my experience.
And it's at some point you just know that it's not worth wasting your time on the mock-up, because it will be recorded, and you cannot nail the emotions like they will on the first. They just get it.
And what happens if you don't have the budget for a live recording? Do you spend that much time during for the MIDI mockup or doing the orchestration, virtual orchestration?
Yeah, of course. And then I have to make it all sound live, and that's sometimes it's easy, depending on the style of music, but sometimes it's a pain in the A.
Yes, but this is where I think your experience as a orchestra performer comes into play, because you've been in there, so you know how it's supposed to sound from within.
Yeah. But going back to the question of the challenges,
yes.
To just something came up in my mind, that sometimes when I work as an orchestrator, some composers, maybe inexperienced or maybe just not thinking the same way as I think, they just tend to push the orchestra towards making it sound like the mock-up. I think this is very common, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and you can make it sound like mock-up, but sometimes it's not worth it. Sometimes the mock-up isn't perfect, and sometimes the composers are really engaged with the sound of it. So I think the best way to approach a recording is just enjoy it and let them feel it.
That's a good, a good suggestion. Okay, so what you told us about your current project. Anything else that you're currently working on that you would like to mention?
A couple of things that I cannot.
Okay, but
and a couple of things that I hope for, but I don't know. Maybe it will happen, maybe not.
Well, fingers crossed. So I think that we can kind of end this podcast with your suggestion, because that's, I think, very important to enjoy enjoy the music and to just think about the music during a recording session, not about all those tiny details. Because after all, at least for me, that was my dream to work with live musicians to get my music recorded, and I'm sure that
same here.
Yeah, for you as well. So once you get to a recording stage and you enjoy it, that's a dream come true. I'm not at that level yet. So to be honest, I need
You're
to
getting
learn.
nervous.
Yeah, I get nervous. I think about all those tiny details, and maybe I should just follow your lead and just enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah, enjoy it, man. I mean,
Yeah.
everything is probably already set up, so you cannot make it worse.
Yeah.
It's only gonna get better now.
All right. Well, thank you again for taking the time, and I really enjoy this conversation. So
Very
I hope,
cool, man.
I'm sure that other people will do as well. You have promised me that you will return for another episode of this podcast when the other projects come out with the improvisation and your other stuff that you still cannot talk about. Okay, thank you, and till the next time.
Yeah,
All the
thanks.
best.
Hope I didn't bore you to death.
No, you didn't. Not at all. All right, cheers.
Cool. Cheers.